ministry, and then, after Ted and I stepped down from all the leadership stuff, if I had my druthers, I'd come and volunteer and be part of this program, but I can't do it with Ted, We're
I'd love him to listen to the presentation of the statewide.
yeah,
Because I'm gonna go, have another nonprofit for that. We
Yeah.
can't have it together.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people feeling like we're compromising.
Right.
Our local, but our local is breeding chaplains. Or
Good.
training chaplains to do
Yes.
what they're doing statewide.
Yes.
So it's an amazing
Yeah.
opportunity, Carol.
I have to up my monthly next year, starting in January. I'll double my. It's just such an important ministry, I'm rethinking about where we do, where
Tell
we
me your
get.
name and we'll talk about it.
Oh, okay. All right. You don't want me to cross my legs.
However you're comfortable.
Okay, my name is Carol Daly, Daly.
And you were,
The undersheriff of Sacramento County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
And I retired from there in 2001.
okay. So you were in law enforcement most of your life?
I entered into law enforcement in 1968.
Wow.
And yes, one of the first women to come onto the department, and actually one of the first women in the state, probably, and actually throughout the nation. Women were just coming into law enforcement.
So how was that for you?
I thought it was wonderful. I was oblivious to what a lot of people might have been going through, but I always had a lot of good support, and assign me where you want me to. I'm here to work and do my best, so I don't care where I work or what I do. And so I was been in touch with Audie Lowe, and going the history. And I said, I'll have to tell you about the history of Sheriff Lowe, who was the second sheriff that I came to work for. First it was Sheriff Misterly and then Sheriff Lowe. And so when we hired on, there were 6 women who were hired on, and we came from clerical jobs, within the county and private industry. And his secretary was retiring, and they didn't have a replacement for her. And he said, "Oh, just bring in one of those female deputies." So they picked me, and so I went in and I served as his secretary. I didn't care. I was getting the same amount of money, and it didn't make any difference to me. So I went in, and it gave me a chance to work very closely with him, reorganize the office, just kind of modernize things. And then they hired a secretary. So then I went back to being a deputy sheriff. Well, then that secretary got pregnant and went on maternity leave, and they said, just bring that female deputy back in here. And so that was how I really, I want to say curried favor, but I really did have favor with Sheriff Lowe. So because being one of the first women on the department, there were a lot of things that he wanted us to do to showcase women in law enforcement. And so I had fabulous experiences. I had great assignments, and I was treated very well by my coworkers.
What made him so farsighted and?
Because he was very progressive in the way in his leadership in the department. He wanted helicopters. He wanted mounted. He wanted everything to bring the department to make it a role model for other departments throughout the United States. And so in 1975, I came on in 68, 1975, he nominated me to go back to the FBI National Academy. I mean, it was unheard of. I was a deputy sheriff. Everybody back there were chiefs and undersheriffs. But he wanted to be one of the first ones in the nation to have a woman going through that academy. So I was one of the first 12 or 15 in the nation to attend that academy. So there were 248 men and 2 women. And it was back at Quantico, Virginia. It was a 3-month school. And so he was just very supportive, and I think it all stemmed from the fact that I don't care where you put me. If you want me to be your secretary, I'll be your secretary. And other people probably had suspicions about why I garnered favor, but none of it was true. It was because I don't care, I'm just going to work hard wherever I am and wherever you want me to serve you, because I serve God.
Tell me, when you first started, were there police chaplains?
No, the police chaplains started, what time?
77?
Which one?
77.
77.
Interesting.
Okay, Gary Benjesdorf was our first police chaplain. It was kind of a mom and pop operation. Gary, went into the field and talked to the officers and went through the departments. And his wife was in the office doing a lot of the office work. And I don't mean it to demean it by saying it was kind of a mom and pop operation, but it was very slim pickings on finances. And Gary really enjoyed being a chaplain. And I remember I was a sergeant working in internal affairs, and Gary would stop by and see me because he knew that internal affairs was probably one of the most stressful positions in the department, as we were investigating the behavior of other officers that we'd received complaints on. And so he'd always stop in and just make sure everything was okay.
What prompted there to be police chaplains? How did this come about? Do you remember?
I don't know if they were nationwide, if it was just a new program that started. I don't know what it was modeled after. At the time, I don't know what it was modeled after.
Well, you've seen the progression though from that to today, and what is the difference?
Well, the difference is God's hand on this ministry. And we had some good chaplains, but when Mindy came along, Mindy had phenomenal organizational skills and a vision that I don't think even at the time that she knew how big it was going to be. And it wasn't to be big for the sake of being big. It was just that because of her ministry to the officers and to the community and the growth of the chaplaincy, it just took off. And it wasn't long after that other agencies wanted to have a chaplaincy program the same as Sacramento County had. And now you can see how it has blossomed out. But I think Mindy was the right person who came along that had the talent and the skills. You may not know this, but she used to sing at every event. And so Mindy would preach and she would sing. She did weddings, she did funerals. And I think the chaplaincy endeared itself to the officers because there was no judgment, no condemnation. There were people who had never been inside of a church that heard about the Lord for the first time through the chaplaincy. There were people that came to know Christ through the chaplaincy. And Mindy never turned anybody down because they didn't have a faith. She was there to serve. She was God's anointed, and she never turned her nose on anything. She never looked down on anybody. She just loved, loved, loved. And that was probably the basic reason, one of the basic reasons, aside from all of the organizational skills, that the chaplaincy was so successful, because everybody knew when they made contact with Mindy and then with Frank and the other chaplains who were trained under her, that they genuinely cared and they loved. And it filled a huge void in the community. When I came into law enforcement, we had a police psychologist, Dr. Coles, and he would do critical incident debriefing. But the chaplaincy was also there at the officer side in the field. They would do follow-up. They would do one-on-one with the officers. And the chaplaincy became a safe place. They could come in and they could talk to Mindy about anything, and they didn't have to worry about being disciplined. They didn't have to worry about how people were going to view them. They could be honest about their feelings, and I think that's why the chaplaincy is such an important and successful program.
Where do you see this going? You see this? Is there a next step in this evolution of?
Well, I think in talking with Mindy, and I haven't been on the board for years. We've supported the law enforcement chaplaincy, but Mindy has been a friend all through the years. And I have to tell you, you never know when you're going to need the services of a chaplain. And we used to tell Mindy and Frank, when you're in the neighborhood, stop by. And so one Sunday after church, there was somebody at the door, and I looked up, and it was our son and daughter-in-law, and Mindy was with him. And I thought, this can't be good. So she was there to tell us that our daughter had died. And for you to understand, our daughter was also a very close friend of Minnie's. She used to do sleepovers with her. She went to her with all of the issues that she wouldn't come to mom and dad with. She was also a deputy sheriff, her and her husband, on the sheriff's department. And so when you think about the job they do, sometimes they are in the heart of the matter of where it hurts them too.
So you were terrible news, but it was delivered by someone you trust. Yeah.
Oh, of course, yes. And of course, when I saw Mindy, I knew it wasn't going to be good news. I really thought something had happened to our son-in-law because Jim was big and he was overweight, and I always just figured he was a heart attack waiting to happen. And we had no idea that it was going to be our daughter. So she was there for us. She was there at the funeral. And you have to understand what a big presence the chaplaincy is at funerals of our officers. Having to make sure that the service is organized, that it's taken care of the way the family wants it taken care of. And a lot of times they have their own pastors, you know, they have their own church to step in, and Mindy and her chaplains are still there. They're still there to walk around and be a comfort to everybody.
How would you describe Mindy?
Oh, beautiful, caring, talented. I want to say ambitious, not in a vain way, but that drive and that vision to see something grow and to help as many people as she can. And now with the chaplaincy being recognized and going statewide, certainly is a program that can be patterned for any other agency in the United States or even abroad if they wanted to use it.
State your name again?
Carol Daly.
Thank you so much.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, Carol.